Today I want to talk with you really candidly about getting out of our comfort zones and our heads as singers. I'm going to get a little bit personal with this and share with you some of my own struggles with this. Many of us play it safe when it comes to our singing. We feel the need to guard our sounds because our voices are such deeply personal things. They emerge from this deep, private, special, and sometimes fragile place. I find that temperament and personality, as well as our upbringing, play a significant role in how most of us use our voices. I've witnessed this in myself as well as in my students. We see some singers who are just so comfortable in who they are and confident in their skills, even if their skills aren't fully developed yet. And they love the spotlight and the stage, and they're not afraid to take artistic risks. And if they've had a bad performance, or if the reviews are poor, and if someone tells them that they're terrible, they're not at all fazed by it. They just keep doing what they love. And then there are those other singers who shy away from the spotlight. Even if they're good vocal technicians, they still have troubles believing that whatever they have inside of them, and sometimes what they have on the outside, who they are, is worth sharing or that anyone else will appreciate it. And it may be because they've been told all their lives that what they have on the inside isn't valuable enough to be shared with others. So for many aspiring singers, just getting out on stage and singing in front of an audience is stepping way outside their comfort zones. So I'm actually an introvert by nature and was a little bit shy and very self-conscious growing up. The only area in which I ever felt any sense of confidence was my gymnastics. Admittedly, I haven't completely outgrown that. I actually experience some pretty intense anxiety every time I sit down in front of this camera to record these videos for you guys. I'm talking heart palpitations, perspiration, flushed cheeks, rapid breathing, dry mouth, and butterflies in my stomach. Putting myself out there for the entire world to view and critique is a very intimidating thing for me. This is me, and these are my words. It's very different from playing a character on stage and being able to hide behind the words of the script and that character's personality and costuming and makeup. It's also very different from when I competed in front of thousands of spectators as an elite level gymnast. For a variety of reasons that I won't get into here, I don't actually love being the center of attention. So this is where I use my actor's training. I do my best to put on the character of someone who is comfortable in front of the camera, and I just get it done. I found myself having to do this on stage as well. I don't get nervous about the actual singing aspect of performing, but I have to try to play the role of the singer who is comfortable with having all eyes on her and who is more of an extrovert than I am in actuality. It's a coping strategy, and I've had to adopt it over the years. I get out of my head and become very task-oriented, and I just get into just do it mode. Our earliest experiences with our voice use also affect the kind of relationship we develop with our voices. I was raised to keep my voice down and to speak as little as possible, especially around adults, because I grew up in a family that believed that children should be seen and not heard. I grew up always concerned about imposing my voice, my noise, on others. So all of that, all those earliest experiences and associations with my voice had a significant impact on how I viewed my singing voice and how I learned to use it. For example, I'm someone who is always aimed to sound sweet and pretty and make a clean sound. Those are just the kinds of sounds that I grew up believing were acceptable and desirable. That's the kind of person that I was raised to be. Always polite, never loud, always soft-spoken, never crude. So singing with sounds that might not be considered sweet and pretty, singing loudly, and singing songs from roles that require the characters' voices to sound unattractive amount to a real psychological stretch for me. Although I appreciate vocal effects such as rasp and distortion and heavy metal screams and death metal growls in other singers' voices, hearing any kind of unrefined or unpleasant sound emitting from my own mouth is difficult for me to embrace. It's kind of an affront to my own definition of what beautiful singing is. I found that what works best for me is when I let go of my overdeveloped need for control of my sound and stop being afraid of not making a beautiful or perfect or refined or polished sound all the time. Please note that I am not referring to the kind of control that denotes mastery of our technique, that ability to make our voices do what we want them to do whenever we want them to do it. That kind of mastery is the ultimate goal of every serious singer. No, I am talking about that control freakish, perfectionistic, OCD, prim and proper, I must sound pretty all the time kind of control that limits us as vocal artists. And that may mean getting used to hearing our own voices sounding a little bit like that of a whining cat or a Sasquatch sometimes. Getting out of my comfort zone by exploring some experimental training sounds and primal sounds, and even exploring different intensity levels, has been truly transformative for my own singing and for my relationship with my voice. Every time I intentionally make silly or unpleasant sounds or sing loudly and unapologetically, I am working against that hard wiring of my personality and temperament and my upbringing. I've learned to not judge these sounds like I would a public performance. I'm not on stage. There is no audience except myself, and I'm not being adjudicated. There will be no cash prizes or recording contracts handed out at the end of today's practice session. I am simply taking the first step toward getting out of my psychological and vocal comfort zones by exploring sounds and colors and textures and dynamics that I may not be very familiar with or accepting of. And so I'm opening up new doors for myself as a vocal artist when I do this. I've made it one of my personal goals to stop being so hypercritical of my own singing while practicing, exploring, and experimenting, and to evaluate the sounds that I'm making by new standards and expectations, not former ones. Again, a performance is a completely different ballgame. I've taken off that judge's robe and I've put on my mad scientist lab coat, and I'm prepared to experiment and try new things. The time for wearing that judge's robe is later. One of the things that I like to do, often with my little ones around, is sing songs with silly voices or accents or characters. I'm trying to stop taking my voice and myself so seriously. That's a real mental hurdle for me sometimes. I am a serious person by nature. I'm kind of a nerd, and I'm not charismatic or a natural-born comedian or the life of the party. I will never be, but I can have a bit of fun with my singing voice while still being committed to developing my technique further. I'm not that serious. I'll sing one of my favorite songs, but switch it up a little bit for every phrase. In one phrase, I might sing with the really strong southern drawl, like a cowgirl, and in the next, I might sing like Marilyn Monroe with a very wispy, airy, sultry tone. And in the next, I might sing with a French accent. And in the next after that, pretend to be a German opera singer. My kids think it's hilarious, but I know that exploring new ways of using my voice is actually a really good exercise for me to help me get out of my comfort zone, to get out of my head, and to get out of my own way. Growth can only occur once we step outside of what is familiar and comfortable for us. When I say comfort zone, I am not talking about our range or our current technical abilities. Be careful of what you expose yourself to in terms of the difficulty level and the challenge. You don't want to push your voice beyond its current limits. Here, when I'm referring to comfort zone, I'm really talking more about the psychological, that place that we go to when we're anxious and afraid and playing it safe. It's that place where we wear our judge's robes and put on an attitude of condemnation and judgment. And that courtroom can be a very negative and stunting place for singers. So find whatever coping strategies you can for taking those psychological, emotional, vocal, and artistic risks. Become an actor playing the role of the confident rock star. Get into just do it mode. Find a safe and private place for you to become more familiar with all that your voice is and could be. Stop beating yourself up and stop listening to everything everyone has ever told you in the past about your voice, and give yourself permission to do what you need to do in order to grow.